the spring of 1987, I made the best move of my life to marshy little Smith Island in the very middle of Chesapeake Bay. I moved my family back to the mainland after 3 years, but your heart never leaves a place like that. Smith Island's got the same problems as other low-lying places around the bay. Some landscapes I knew there 30 years ago are beneath the waves now. The aftermath of the nor'easter gives a glimpse of what the island could look like every day later in this century, drowned, washed away by erosion and rising seas. But the more imminent threat is not the disappearance of land, but the disappearance of a culture and the people who have defined it for centuries. Since I left, the island's population's fallen from nearly 500 to under 200. About 40 remain full-time where I lived in Tylerton, an island within an island connected only by water to the other villages of Ewell and Rhodes Point.
Yesterday we didn't sell no number ones.
When a community like Tylerton gets down to a few dozen people, it's obvious every family counts. But the Marshall family really counts. On both sides, they hark back to the beginnings of Smith Island. Marietta's an Evans from the capital city of Ewell, where her family name predominates. Her dad, Elmer, was a prominent waterman, captain of a skipjack that was a pride of the island fleet, dredging oysters under sail all over the Maryland Chesapeake.
And it was so pretty when the dredge boats would sail in on a Friday evening, and the creek was just full of dredge boats, and now there's none.
Dwight grew up in Drum Point, the old-timey name for Tylerton, where about half the names are Marshall. But before that, he'd tell me about his people coming from Shanks's, an island he'd talk about almost like it was another country. In fact, its remnants lie just several hundred yards south and west of where he's living now.
Erosion is terrible. If I had a picture of last year where I crabbed over on the Bayside Way, you wouldn't believe how much that's eroded away. It's disturbing, it really is. Down in Shanks is where my great-great-grandparents used to live. It used to be trees. The land was probably 1 mile to 1.5 miles out because they had fruit trees and all kinds of shade trees and trees something like a home now.
Shanks's has become so eroded and shifted around. Dwight used to say if his dad, Russell, who died in the 1970s, were to come back, he'd be lost down there now.